There is a silent architecture beneath every moment of your life, a pattern so precise it almost feels impossible to see. But occasionally, for a fleeting instant, something pierces the veil. You find yourself thinking about someone seconds before they call. You notice repeating numbers on a clock over and over. A book falls off a shelf and contains the sentence you needed most. And in those moments, something inside you stirs. A memory of something ancient, a knowing that none of this is random. We've been taught to call these moments coincidences, to believe they're accidents in an indifferent universe, meaningless overlaps of chance. But what if that story was the most limiting idea you ever accepted? What if nothing that shows up in your life is random, and everything is responding to who you are becoming? This is the first fracture in the illusion. Because once you question the myth of coincidence, you start to see the hidden threads connecting everything. You begin to realize that life is constantly communicating with you in a language deeper than words, a language of symbols, patterns, timings, and alignments. Synchronicity is not an accident. It is evidence that the field you are immersed in is intelligent and responsive. Think of the times you were lost in confusion or doubt, and suddenly something appeared that felt like a sign. A phrase overheard, a song that played at the perfect moment, an opportunity you couldn't have predicted. And notice how your body knew before your mind could explain it that this was meaningful. This is the resonance of synchronicity, a vibrational confirmation that you are not separate from the intelligence of creation. But here is what most people miss. The field doesn't send you signs to prove something. It doesn't perform miracles to entertain you. Synchronicity is not here to convince you that magic exists. It is here to remind you that you are already part of the magic. Because the more you look closely, the more you begin to sense that these so-called coincidences only happen when you loosen your grip on control, when you stop trying to force reality to look a certain way, when you surrender the need to know exactly how and when things should unfold. In that space of openness, the field finally has room to show you that you are being guided, always. This is the paradox. The harder you search for the signs, the quieter they become. The more desperately you try to engineer them, the more invisible they grow. Because synchronicity is not born from effort. It emerges from alignment. It flourishes in the space where your mind softens and your heart opens, where you trust that there is an intelligence far beyond your plans, and that this intelligence is not separate from you. It is you, in a deeper, more expanded expression. If you have ever wondered why your life sometimes feels stuck, repetitive, and heavy, consider this. You may have been so busy searching for the next thing that you stopped noticing what was already unfolding around you. Synchronicity doesn't shout. It whispers. It doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives in the soft precision of timing so perfect it could never be rehearsed. You are not here to chase miracles. You are here to remember that the field is alive, listening, and reflecting your own state back to you. Every alignment you've ever experienced was not luck. It was the echo of your own vibration meeting the universe halfway. So today, I invite you to consider a different possibility. Nothing in your life has ever been random. The moments that felt like accidents were actually invitations. The delays were adjustments. The coincidences were confirmations. And the fact that you are here, listening to these words, is perhaps the greatest sign of all. That you are ready to see life as it truly is. A dialogue with a field that never stops responding to you. And if you can allow yourself to soften your search, even for a moment, you may start to notice that what you need has been trying to find you all along. If synchronicity feels like something beyond probability, something too precise to be random, it's because it is. To understand why, you have to look beyond the visible world and into the invisible architecture of reality itself. Because behind everything you touch, taste, and measure, there is a quantum field. A vast, intelligent matrix of energy and information. And this field is not passive. It is responsive to consciousness. Your consciousness. Modern physics has struggled for decades to reconcile the strange behavior of the subatomic world. When scientists observe particles, they find that these particles do not have fixed positions until they are measured. They exist as waves of possibility, probabilities hovering in an invisible cloud, waiting to be collapsed into a specific state. This is called the observer effect, and it means that reality is not simply happening to you. Reality is interacting with you, observing, sensing, and responding to the vibration you emit. What does this have to do with synchronicity? Everything. Imagine the quantum field as a living ocean of infinite potentials. Each thought you think, each feeling you sustain, each belief you carry acts like a frequency, a signal that ripples through that ocean. And as those ripples spread outward, they begin to organize particles, events, encounters, and opportunities into patterns that mirror your vibration. This is not philosophy. This is how non-local consciousness influences the field. You are never just an observer. You are an instigator of coherence. This is why, when you are in a heightened state, gratitude, trust, inspiration, the world seems to bend around you. The right person calls. The unexpected solution arrives. A door you thought was closed quietly opens, because you have momentarily stepped out of survival consciousness and into resonance, and the field always rewards resonance with alignment. The pioneering work of physicists like David Bohm describes this as the hollow movement, an unbroken wholeness where everything is connected beyond space and time. When you experience synchronicity, you are feeling the echo of this interconnectedness. It's as if the universe is folding in on itself to deliver an answer to the question you didn't even realize you were asking. And here is something most people never consider. Synchronicity is not proof that the universe is suddenly paying attention to you. The universe has never stopped paying attention. What changes is your state of coherence. When your mind, heart, and body enter alignment, your signal becomes clear, and the field, always responsive, mirrors that clarity back in the form of perfectly timed events. Think of your consciousness as both a transmitter and a receiver. When you are stressed, anxious, and obsessed with outcomes, your signal is static, fragmented. The field can only reflect more noise. But when you quiet your thoughts and expand into trust, you tune into a bandwidth of possibility where synchronicities happen with graceful consistency. It is not a reward for effort. It is a byproduct of alignment. This is why you can spend years trying to force things to happen, only to watch everything fall into place the moment you surrender. Because surrender is not weakness. Surrender is coherence. And coherence is the language the field understands. It is easy to look back on moments of synchronicity and tell yourself they were chance. It is harder and braver to believe that you played a role in calling them forth, that your intention and your openness were the magnetic poles around which reality organized itself. The field doesn't care if you believe in it or not. It doesn't wait for your permission to respond. But the more you recognize its responsiveness, the more you relax into trust. And in that trust, you become available for more guidance, more alignment, more meaning. You are not living in a random sequence of disconnected moments. You are immersed in a living tapestry that is constantly weaving itself in response to your vibration. And every time you choose presence over fear, curiosity over judgment, faith over control, the pattern becomes more beautiful. So the next time something unlikely unfolds in your life, pause. Breathe. And ask yourself, what did this moment come to teach me about who I am becoming? Because synchronicity is never random. It is the quantum field whispering back, you are not alone. You never have been. If reality is not a fixed sequence but a responsive field, then every experience in your life is ultimately a mirror of something deeper, the pattern you are emitting. Most people never pause long enough to consider what they are actually broadcasting. They move through their days thinking, wishing, worrying, unaware that every thought and emotion is a signal, and those signals don't vanish. They imprint the field. They shape the invisible scaffolding of tomorrow. You have been taught that your circumstances are accidental or dictated by forces outside your control. But what if the truth is the opposite? What if everything you call your life is simply the echo of your own frequency, reflecting back to show you what you believe, expect, and feel most often? This is why synchronicity doesn't appear as a random reward. It emerges as a natural response to coherence. When your internal state becomes consistent, when your thoughts, emotions, and energy align, the field has no choice but to mirror that clarity back to you. The pattern you emit becomes the pattern you experience. Imagine standing in front of an endless hall of mirrors. Every direction you look, you see a reflection of yourself, sometimes distorted, sometimes crystal clear. Your reality operates the same way. What you fear, you often see. What you resent, you keep alive. What you cherish, you multiply. Because attention is energy, and energy is formative. This is why certain themes repeat in your life. Relationships that feel eerily similar, challenges that keep resurfacing, situations that seem stuck on replay. The field is not punishing you. It is patiently showing you the frequencies you continue to broadcast, the patterns you haven't yet reclaimed or transcended. Every recurring experience is not a curse. It is an invitation to become conscious. This is the hidden power behind synchronicity. When you begin to shift your emotional baseline, the field notices instantly. If you've lived most of your life vibrating in fear, scarcity, or self-doubt, the first time you sustain gratitude or trust for even a moment, you create a new signature. And that new signature doesn't just feel different. It begins to organize reality differently. The conversations that find you, the solutions that appear, the symbols that repeat, they all carry a single message. You are changing. Keep going. Here's where many people get stuck. They think changing their thoughts alone will create new outcomes. But thoughts without emotion are like seeds scattered on concrete. They carry potential but no chance to take root. Feeling is the water. Emotion is the fertile soil. If you continue thinking affirmations but still vibrate in doubt, the field will mirror the doubt, not the words. Because the field doesn't respond to what you say, it responds to what you are. This is why trusting the signs requires more than passive curiosity. It requires the willingness to become the version of yourself who no longer needs proof. The person who can feel coherence before it shows up as evidence. The person who recognizes that reality shifts when you shift, not the other way around. Every time you repeat an old story about why things don't work for you, you reactivate the frequency of that story. Every time you surrender into trust, you begin to emit a vibration that says, I am available for a different outcome. And the field listens. The more consistent the signal, the faster reality organizes itself to match it. This doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It means you have to be aware, because awareness is the lever that moves everything. When you notice yourself slipping back into old frequencies, fear, judgment, urgency, you can pause, you can breathe, you can choose again. And that single choice, repeated often enough, becomes a new pattern. It is in these subtle moments, the quiet decisions to realign, that the most profound synchronicities are born. Because when you emit the frequency of trust, the field responds with confirmation. When you radiate gratitude, the field amplifies your blessings. When you embody the feeling of wholeness, life stops sending you lessons in fragmentation. So ask yourself gently, what is the pattern I have been broadcasting without realizing it? And what would happen if I decided to change it not someday, but now? Because everything you wish to experience is already encoded in the field. The signs are already moving toward you, and the moment you shift your vibration, the pattern begins to reorganize around who you are becoming. If you've ever felt that life was trying to speak to you but you didn't know how to listen, you're not alone. Most people are so consumed by noise, mental chatter, emotional turbulence, constant distraction, that they can't recognize the subtle ways the field is always communicating. Synchronicity doesn't require you to be special or chosen. It only requires that you become present enough to notice what has always been there. Imagine that the field is like a river, flowing with infinite currents of possibility. When you are tense and distracted, it's as if you stand on the bank, convinced that nothing is moving. But when you soften your gaze, when you drop into presence, the motion becomes visible. The currents start to reveal themselves. The patterns start to make sense. So how do you start tuning into the signs? First, you slow down. Not just your schedule, but your internal tempo. The field doesn't speak the language of urgency. It speaks in the language of resonance. When you take a breath, unclench your mind, and settle into your body, you create a receptive space. It's in that space that synchronicity slips through the cracks of your old narratives. One of the simplest practices is to begin observing repetition. Patterns are the language of the quantum field. When you see the same number sequence over and over, hear the same phrase from different people, or notice a symbol appearing in unexpected places, pause. Don't dismiss it as random. Ask yourself, what part of me is being reflected here? You don't need an immediate answer. The asking itself is an opening. Another powerful practice is to cultivate emotional coherence. When your heart and mind are in agreement, your signal to the field becomes clear. The HeartMath Institute has shown that states like gratitude, appreciation, and care create measurable coherence in your heart's electromagnetic field. And it is in this state that you become most receptive to intuitive nudges and synchronistic alignments. This is not about forcing positivity. It is about stabilizing into an emotional frequency that feels expansive, even when you don't yet see evidence. You can also begin to ask the field for guidance. Before sleep, take a moment to set an intention. Show me what I need to see. This simple request is like dialing a frequency. When you wake up, pay attention to the first thoughts, sensations, or images that arise. Synchronicity often arrives in the spaces between effort, in the liminal states where your conscious mind relaxes its grip. Journaling is another gateway. Write down the so-called coincidences you notice. Over time, you'll start to see that they form a dialogue, a conversation between your inner world and the field around you. The more you record them, the more your awareness sharpens. What once felt like noise becomes a symphony of meaning. It's also essential to release the need to interpret everything immediately. Sometimes the mind will rush to label a sign as good or bad, relevant or irrelevant. But the field doesn't operate in black and white. What matters is the resonance you feel in your body. If something stirs your intuition, a subtle quickening of the heart, a sense of familiarity, a quiet thrill, trust that. The body often recognizes alignment before the mind can explain it. Most importantly, practice trust without proof. The need for constant validation is a vibration of doubt. The moment you demand evidence, you tighten your frequency and slow the flow of synchronicity. When you can relax into not knowing, when you can allow the field to reveal itself in its own timing, you step into a state of surrender that magnetizes alignment. This is why the most profound signs often appear when you least expect them. When you are walking, resting, or simply allowing yourself to be. Synchronicity loves the spaces you leave open. It loves the moments when you let go of the narrative that you must figure it all out alone. So today, try this. Breathe, observe, allow. Imagine that the field is always listening, always responding, always arranging. Because it is. Every intention you hold, every question you ask, every frequency you sustain, they are all invitations. And the signs are the field's way of whispering back, I hear you, I am with you. Keep going. If you feel ready to invite more of this guidance into your life, take a moment right now and type in the comments, I trust the signs. This simple act is more than a declaration. It's a signal, a vibrational signature that you are no longer chasing meaning but allowing it to find you. Because when you stop needing to control every outcome, you finally create space for the universe to surprise you. You have been taught your entire life that control equals safety, that if you can just plan enough, predict enough, analyze enough, you will finally feel secure. But here is the paradox no one tells you. The more you cling to control, the more life resists you. The more you demand certainty, the less space you leave for synchronicity to unfold. Because control is a vibration of fear disguised as competence. It tells the field, I don't trust what you have for me. And the field, always reflecting, shows you more situations to confirm your doubt. Letting go is not the same as giving up. It is the art of allowing. It is the willingness to believe that there is an intelligence operating beyond the limits of your mind, an intelligence that already knows where you are going, why you are here, and what you are becoming. When you loosen your grip on how things must happen, you open the door for life to orchestrate something bigger than you could have imagined. Imagine standing in a river, holding onto a rock because you are terrified of being swept away. You feel safe because you are still, but you are also stuck, straining, exhausted, and all the while the current, the very force that could carry you to the next chapter, is patiently waiting for you to let go. Synchronicity is like that current. It can only take you when you stop resisting. Most people think they are manifesting, but in truth, they are negotiating. They are offering the field their preferences, their deadlines, their conditions. They are willing to trust, but only if everything unfolds exactly as planned. This is not trust, this is transaction. And the field doesn't respond to transactions. It responds to coherence, it responds to surrender. Surrender is not passivity, it is active alignment. It is the choice to hold a clear intention while releasing the demand that it arrives in a certain way. When you let go of control, you are not abandoning your desires. You are saying to the field, I trust you to bring me what matches my highest good in whatever form that takes. That vibration alone begins to rearrange reality. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is to move from seeking to allowing. Seeking is a state of lack. It broadcasts, I don't have it yet. Allowing is a state of presence. It declares, I am available to receive. This subtle difference is everything, because when you stop searching for signs as proof, you start seeing them as companions. When you stop measuring progress against expectations, you start feeling the quiet perfection of where you are. So how do you practice letting go? You start by observing when your body contracts, when you notice urgency in your chest, tightness in your jaw, the familiar swirl of overthinking. Pause, breathe, place your hand on your heart, and remind yourself, I am safe to release. You can also practice softening your language. Instead of saying I need this to happen, try I am open to the perfect unfolding. The words you choose carry vibration. Let them be invitations, not demands. It can feel vulnerable to trust something you cannot see. But consider this. The moments in your life when everything aligned were not the ones you micromanaged. They were the moments you allowed yourself to be guided. They were the chapters you didn't plan, but somehow felt inevitable. Synchronicity thrives in the spaces you leave unscripted. It emerges when you create room for surprise, for wonder, for grace. The more you try to predict every step, the more you entangle yourself in resistance. But when you step back and soften your grasp, the field begins to respond in ways that feel effortless, almost miraculous. Letting go is a practice, not a destination. You will find yourself returning to control out of habit, and that's okay. The work is simply to notice, to breathe, and to choose again. Over time, trust becomes your default frequency, and in that trust, you start to witness a different kind of life. One where you don't have to force synchronicity, because you are living in resonance with it. Remember, you were never meant to do this alone. You were never meant to carry every detail in your mind. The universe has been conspiring on your behalf since the moment you arrived here, and when you surrender, you finally allow it to show you what was waiting all along. There's a silent frequency woven into everything you have ever longed for. A vibration so pure and steady that it doesn't need evidence to sustain itself. This frequency is called trust. And trust is not a feeling you stumble upon by accident. It is a state of being you choose again and again, especially when logic tells you there is nothing to trust yet. When you begin to live from this frequency, something extraordinary happens. Life stops feeling like a series of disconnected challenges you have to solve. It starts to feel like a conversation, a dialogue between your heart and the intelligence that holds the entire universe together. You realize that the signs you were waiting for were never meant to prove anything. They were reminders, gentle confirmations that you are seen, heard, and guided. The frequency of trust is not loud. It doesn't shout over your doubts or compete with your fear. It waits patiently beneath the noise, inviting you to return. Every time you soften your urgency, every time you pause before reacting, every time you choose to believe that what is meant for you cannot miss you, you are aligning with this frequency. And when you do, the field reorganizes in ways your mind could never engineer. Imagine for a moment that everything you desire is already circling you, looking for a place to land, not because you forced it, but because you finally became available to receive it. This is the hidden architecture of synchronicity. It does not respond to desperation. It responds to coherence. It responds to the energy of a heart that trusts what it cannot yet see. You may never fully understand how each sign finds you. You may never be able to trace every alignment to a single cause. But you don't need to. The mystery is part of the beauty. The more you relax into it, the more life reveals itself to be on your side. Because the field does not judge your readiness. It simply waits for your openness. Trust is not about ignoring reality. It is about meeting reality without armor. It is choosing to believe that every delay, every detour, every unexplainable moment has its place in the greater design. When you live this way, you don't need guarantees. You feel something deeper than certainty. You feel connection. In this space, you stop searching for proof and start living as if everything is already aligned. And in doing so, you emit a frequency that changes what finds you. You become the person who no longer asks for signs to believe, but receives signs because you already do. So take a breath, soften your gaze, and remind yourself, you are not here to force life into a shape. You are here to meet life as it is and trust that every moment, even the ones that make no sense, is leading you somewhere beautiful. And if this message has resonated with you, consider subscribing. Not because you need more information, but because sometimes you need reminders. Reminders that you were never alone in this journey. Reminders that the field is always listening, always responding, always reflecting back the frequency you choose to embody. Because in the end, the greatest synchronicity is not the perfect timing of an event. It is the moment you realize you were always exactly where you needed to be, trusting what you could not yet see.